everything you see in The Simpsons is real.
Well, I know that actually. I mean, they predicted this and everything else, so it probably is.
Listen,
But
yeah.
like, just to add to the sort of reality over here, we have in my local beach down the road here in Dublin. None other than Matt Damon is going down swimming in the local beach here because he's stranded. He was due to make a film here in Ireland, and he's now stranded here. So, like, if we didn't feel like we're in the middle of a disaster film already, you know, you've got Matt Damon hanging around, makes it kind of convinced it must be some sort of. Where are you at the moment, Amoreena?
I'm in California, so right now I'm in Carlsbad in San Diego County, so Southern California.
Locked in your houses, are you? Like ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a little bit looser than what's going on in Ireland because, like, obviously I've seen what my Irish friends are posting. Like, we don't have a 2-kilometer limit. There are people
we seem to be very strict with that. Like 2 kilometers, I've never heard anything lower than that.
Yeah, it's quite strict. I mean, there are some countries I think where you're just literally not allowed to leave your house.
Yeah.
Like I think Australia is incredibly strict. And obviously Italy, people you have to have like a citation to be able to go to the grocery store or whatever. Like you have to log what you're doing and when you're doing it to be able to get anywhere, I suppose. California is not like that. California is really quite relaxed, I think, in terms of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Like we don't really have police involvement in enforcing the lockdown. Like the only thing that you would get cited for, that you'd get a ticket for, is like if you go down to the beach, because all the beaches and national parks are closed in California. So if somebody finds you on a beach, then you'll get a ticket for it. You'll have to pay. But I know Italy, like if you're found on the streets without logging what you're doing, you can face like 3 months jail time. So it's very, like, comparatively, like it's very, very relaxed here. Like I'm able to kind of go between, like, I'm staying at my parents' house, but I also go over to my boyfriend's house, and so I have like the 2 places that I'm isolating in. But like, you know, nothing more than that. Like you're not allowed to have gatherings or really see anybody who's outside of your family.
Yeah. So it sounds like one of the more relaxed kind of areas of the world. So, I mean, New York, like I was talking to Emily from New York last week, they're kind of nearly the epicenter of it at this stage, I think. But
yeah. I heard something that California has more cases than New York now or something, but I might be mistaken on that. Yeah, but we're also a much bigger state. So, like, the amount of cases that they'll have in New York is incredibly close quarters, I suppose, whereas California is like bigger than Ireland. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, we sometimes forget that it's probably several times the size of Ireland, I'd say.
Yeah, we have some counties in California that haven't had any case. And the Bay Area and San Diego, I think, kind of are the epicenters in California for it. But LA, I think, is the worst for it.
Yeah, I presume so, but it's probably the most populous area.
Yeah, LA and San Francisco are like the highest population.
Yeah. And did you get stuck at home? Was that it? I mean, because you're based in London now, are you?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Like, because I'm a very relaxed person. So
I know,
like
I know, exactly.
Maybe too relaxed. I don't know, but
that's a good thing.
Yeah. Like everything was going on, and I'm doing a master's in London, so we still had another week and a half of classes before we went on break. And then I got a phone call. Like I had spoken to my mom about it because I'd have to come back to California on the breaks. And I had a flight like the day after the term was going to end. And I told my mom to tell me if they were closing the schools, because the assumption is that they close the schools before they close the airports, and it did not work out like that. Like they closed a couple of universities, and then my mom called me like 10 times at 1:30 a.m. And I finally answered, and I was like, "What do you want? Like what
That
could
sounds
you
like That sounds like a very Irish mother kind of conversation, you know?
Jesus Christ, like, why are you calling me at this hour? Like, you better be in the hospital if you're gonna call me like this. And she was on the other line of the phone, and she was in a panic, and she was like, you need to book your flight right now. You need to come home tomorrow, because Trump just announced that he was closing all of the borders from everywhere except from the UK in Europe. And like, they're probably going to close from the UK as well. And at first I was kind of like, you know what, it's 1:30 in the morning. Like, I have assessments next week that I cannot miss. Like, you're stressing me out. I can't make this decision right now. I'll ring you back in the morning. And then I hung up on her, and then I waited like 10 minutes, and I was like, and rang her back, and then I booked a ticket. I'm studying to be a therapist, so I had a placement a couple days from then on the Friday, and I had to go in and speak to my teachers, make sure that they weren't going to kick me out of the masters if I missed my assessments.
Yeah, that must have been crazy, because that whole flight ban thing happened very suddenly, didn't it? I mean, it closed down basically everywhere in Europe, apart from actually the UK and Ireland, as it turned out. We made an exception for us.
Yeah, well, you guys have the accent.
Yeah, and most of us are over there anyway, then. So already.
Yeah, sure, all the Americans think that they're Irish anyways, so here we are.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was really, really sudden and really crazy. And so I booked it for a couple days out, and then I went and I did my placement, and I spoke to my teachers and just kind of told them, like, I had to go back, because, like, what am I meant to do? Like, what if they don't reopen the borders, or, you know, whatever? Like, who knows what kind of crazy political shit could come out of it. So I was just like, I need to be back. And I've lived in Europe for almost 8 years now. My mom's never once called me and asked me to come back. So I was like, right.
Yeah, that's a sign things are getting serious, all right.
It's an emergency. She actually wants me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I flew back, and it was mad weird. Like, they were telling people where to sit. I don't know how they were differentiating who sat in what section in the airport, but they were telling certain people to sit, and they would look at your boarding pass or passport, and then they'd tell you, go sit over there and go sit over there, whatever it was. And then, like, I kind of expected it to be a little bit more hardcore with the questioning. Like, they were kind of like, did you go anywhere in the Schengen areas? And I was like, no. And they were like, okay, grand, get on the flight. And I was like, I could have just lied to you. Okay, bye. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so
Yeah,
you're
because
not
I
going
was
to check my
wondering.
passport stamps?
Yeah, I was wondering that, because I mean, it's almost like another 9/11, you know, and you wonder, is that going to massively change airport security? But it doesn't seem to have really yet.
No. Like, I mean, I think that they're quarantining people now, maybe. I have no idea, because once I got back from the UK, I was like, right, that's me done looking at that stuff. I got back safely. Won't touch anybody. Like,
Yeah.
I'll do the rules, but I'm trying not to, because I think that there's, like, I mean, the coronavirus is really, really serious for a lot of people, but I do genuinely think that there is a lot of kind of emotions involved in the thing, and fear of death and fear of change and all of these things going on, and it's resulting in a bit of an over dramatization of, like, the engagement that people are having with it, because I think
Yeah.
kind of if you're doing what you're supposed to do, you can fucking relax.
Yeah, there is. You're right. I mean, there is a massive amount of fear out there. I mean, you could write a psychological thesis on the reaction of people around the world to this. You know, it's so fascinating how
Yeah.
different people are reacting. You know.
Yeah, I mean, people are afraid of each other. Like, it's weird. Like, you know, you'll be walking your dog down the street, and you're meant to do this, but, like, they won't go just 2 meters apart. They'll go all the way to the other side of the street. Like, they're afraid of each other. It's
Absolutely.
a weird thing, you know, and there have been diseases that have high contraction rates, that have much higher mortality rates, because it's, to my understanding, hovering at about 3.5% mortality rate, and they're also estimating that they're only catching about 50% of the cases, so that would put it at like 1.7, 1.8, something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, and the flu is 0.8%. So, like, it's serious, and people who contract it and it's serious for them, like, it needs to be taken care of and that needs to be respected. But at the same time, it's not maybe as dramatic. I mean, maybe I'm being ignorant and saying that or in thinking that, but
No, I mean, I know what you mean. I mean, I had a
I don't
similar
know.
experience. I mean, I'm walking down the street and a lady looked up and saw me and jumped off the path onto the street, onto the road. You
Yeah,
know, I mean, people are viewing even just the sight of another person as kind of a lethal threat. You know, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it's seeing other people as dirty, and it's really symbolic, I think, of the way that a lot of countries treat foreigners.
and how is it like on the streets on the streets there where you are? I mean, has it changed? Is everything closed?
Restaurants and bars are closed. Anything that's like quote non-essential is closed. You can still get a lot of things delivered to your house, but people are out. Like, it's not as busy on the roads in terms of traffic and things like that. Because California is horrible for traffic, but
Yeah,
and there hasn't been
it's supposed to be
any.
legendary for traffic, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
And
heard about it.
there hasn't been any, but like the amount of people out like walking and just trying to get a few minutes outside of their houses is unreal. Like I don't think I've ever seen so many people walking on the street.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, same here. It's people desperate to avoid going nuts, basically, being stuck inside.
Yeah, I mean, the mental health aspect of it is also really important.
It is, and I think it's probably underestimated the effect that's going to have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people are so resilient. Like people adapt. Like I feel like I've adapted to being inside a lot of the time. Like I was quite unhappy when I first got back because I was like, I don't have an apartment in London anymore. Now I'm back in my mom's house all the time. My mom
Yeah,
really is a lovely lady. She's not getting she's not getting it good on this interview.
we'll put a disclaimer up about that. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had Rob here as well because he'd have a lot to say about that as well. I mean, people moving
Yeah.
back in with their families. Actually, it's something that I didn't consider. It's a big factor in it because a lot of people have to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we just got out of our lease agreement for my apartment in London, and it's the first time in like 8 years that I haven't had a place to live in Europe. It's a very kind of weird thing,
Yeah,
weird transition. It's a small thing. It's not actually. It's more of like symbolic thing than anything else. It doesn't actually change
yeah,
anything because I can't go.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it's bizarre.
yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. And like, how are people feeling there? I mean, are people happy with the government treatment of it, or the local government treatment of it, or is there a total difference? I mean, you've kind of an independent state there in California. It's nearly a kind of an independent state in the union at this stage.
Yeah, yeah. We have California is one of the more liberal states.
Yeah.
So in comparison to a lot of the other states in the country, in the Midwest and in the South, we have independent views. Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, like, I think that it's become kind of a thing about social acceptability, like that it's socially acceptable to stay in your house and to agree with what the government is telling us to do. Um, I don't know if there are better ways to handle it, because I'm simply not educated enough in microbiology or
I don't think anybody is really.
whatever it is. I
Yeah, like
mean,
that's the thing. It's so new and it's come on top of people so suddenly that really, I don't think anybody really knows what the
yeah, and I mean,
best way to react is.
it ties into the fear thing as well, like because when you're afraid of something when you're a small child, you look to your parents to tell you what to do and how to
Yeah,
handle it, and then they tell you and then you assume that that's the right way to do it, and then you go on. And when you're an adult, the government is kind of symbolic in the unconscious for mom and dad. And
yeah,
so when you're terrified and you need someone to tell you what to do because you have no fucking idea, and the government says it's going to be okay if you follow X, Y, and Z, of course people are going to follow X, Y, and Z because they're scared and they don't know what else to do, and they don't have access to the information and the professionals and the experts the way that the government might.
yeah.
So it's really, in my opinion, questionable whether or not the government is always acting in our best interest.
Well, yeah, that's
Um,
definitely the
I
case all the time.
mean,
Yeah, there's always a bit of
so
skepticism there. Yeah.
who's to say that this actually is the best way to handle it, because it is kind of fucking the economy and people's mental health, and there are a lot of different aspects to it. But that being said, I think that my opinion is a very unpopular one in terms of the American people and the amount of patriotism and loyalty that people I have observed in the larger populace feel towards the American government, just because they've been programmed to their whole lives.
That's interesting. You think there's a rise in patriotism over there as a result of this?
No, I think that patriotism in America is already really high, just in general, on like an egoic level. Like I went on a date with a lad like years ago who works with the Irish government, and he works in like customs, building laws for travel and building deals with different countries for travel. And he was telling me that they have a literally different protocol for dealing with Americans, because Americans think that their country is the best country on earth and the most free country on earth, and all of these fucking lies that we've been fed our whole lives. You know, you're 4 years old and you have to stand up and like say the Pledge of Allegiance. You're pledging allegiance to this thing, this entity that you have no idea what it even fucking is yet.
Do you actually do that in school in America? Yeah.
Yes,
You
every
pledge
single
allegiance
fucking morning.
So that every single morning. So that kind of scene that you see in The Simpsons for their pledging allegiance to the flag is actually
It's real. Everything
Really?
you see in The Simpsons is real.
Well, I know that actually. I mean, they predicted this and everything else, so it probably is.
Listen,
But
yeah, yeah.
you pledge allegiance to the flag every single morning in a
In
state
the
school in
United
America.
States of America. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you legally don't have to. And
Oh, yeah.
so
So I presume there's conscientious objectors who probably don't.
there's usually one in every few classes.
Yeah, yeah.
So I learned that I wasn't supposed to do it when I was like 8 years old, and I was like, I'm a rebel, I'm not going to. And I sat down, everybody else stood up, and I made eye contact with the teacher like she gave a shit what I was doing. I made eye contact with her like she was the one that I was rebelling against the entire time. But
Yeah.
you know,
So,
it is what it
Amoreena, you
is.
were a rebel from the age of 8. I'm proud of you.
We all got to start somewhere, friend.
Actually, around the same time, about the age of 8, there were 2 Republican prisoners on the hunger strike in Ireland. I performed a little strike and a kind of a parade around the schoolyard in their honour, and I got hauled over the coals for it. So maybe, there's something in common there.
So something there is Irish punishment, all right.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, I won't do it again. I'm sorry.
I've now
I'm
been
so sorry.
programmed.
But I'm a Republican, but I'm also really sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so by the sounds of it, there's a lot of social compliance over there with everything, and government is probably more popular than ever. People are going along with everything they're told, and there's a rise in patriotism, or you reckon it's there already and it's just been reawakened?
Yeah, I think that it's there already. I think that it was awake. I think that in terms of people's compliance and their willingness to accept whatever the fuck the government says is higher. But that being said, I mean, it's not the same for every state. Like Michigan just had an armed protest.
I saw that. I saw the reports about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was an armed protest there, and I didn't see a report on it or anything, but one of my friends was telling me that West Virginia also had one. So I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it really depends. Like, there are just some people, there's like different clumps of people, and some of the patriots are like, yeah, let's do it, and most of the average normal people are saying, let's do it. And then there's a group of patriots that are like, no, fuck you.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
So who's to say?
Do you know?
I wonder if there are any flights even going. Like,
There are, yeah. There's still flights actually all out of Dublin Airport. Now I'm not sure how many people are taking them, but the airports are
yeah,
still open here. Are they open there?
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I would assume so because I haven't heard that they've completely closed the airports. But flights are so cheap right now.
Oh,
I
I'm
was looking
sure
at
they will. Yeah.
I was looking at flights to Costa Rica and they're like $250. It's like €200 to go to Costa Rica. I was like, Jesus Christ. Maybe I can book it for like right after the quarantine's finished.
I think a lot of people are probably thinking exactly the same thing. I was thinking the same thing, yeah. Could I
Jeez,
just
man.
guess a date that this will all be lifted and do a mass booking?
Yeah, Jesus Christ. But then, like
Risky.
social distancing will stop and then
Yeah,
coronavirus will come back and then you'll be stuck in Costa Rica.
yeah. Probably worse
Not a
place to be
bad place.
stuck in. Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
So
Lie
what
on the
about you?
beach.
So what are you spending the time doing while you're stuck in your parents' house and stuff? How are you managing to spend the time?
I made trays. I
Leave
made
evidence of
serving
this. Can you,
trays.
do we have pictures?
Do you want to? Yeah, I mean, I can send you pictures. I have one of them
Do
here, and one of them's
send
over
me
at my
pictures.
boyfriend's house. But I can show you one of them right now.
Yeah.
I took it from a very light wood to
Ah, very artistic.
yeah,
It's a piece of modern art.
it's very postmodern.
Yeah,
I'll
definitely.
let you guys all figure out what it means.
Yeah, yeah. It's the post-corona angst.
Yeah, that's what I'll title the piece. It'll be hanging in a fucking
Yeah, yeah,
gallery somewhere,
yeah.
selling for $1 million.
So, I mean, are you acting or have you been acting recently?
No, I kind of got really sick of learning lines.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a bitch, all right, isn't it?
if one of my acting teachers from when I was younger sees this, they're gonna fucking kill me. No, do you know what? I really like directing if I was to do anything creative, but like I'm a drama movement therapist, so like it's not performance, but there is performative aspects to it, and it's more tied into mental health, which is really, really kind of where my niche is and
Yes, I remember you
where
telling
I'd
me
rather
about
be.
this when you were studying at UCD, and
Yeah,
it's drama as a form of therapy for people with mental health difficulties, isn't it?
yeah,
It
yeah,
sounds
exactly.
fascinating, yeah.
It's really effective. I mean, in terms of like, I'm writing an essay on intergenerational trauma right now, and so I've been doing a lot of studies on trauma, and trauma really exists in your cells in your body. Like the molecules of emotion exist in your cells in your body, and so it's more of a somatic approach
Yeah,
to dealing with trauma. It's a bottom up approach rather than a top down approach, if that makes sense. So you're dealing with your unconscious to be able to heal the conscious
yeah,
rather than using the conscious to try and access the unconscious. So in that way, I believe it's really effective, and really helpful. But of course, like, different people need different types of therapy.
yeah. That's fascinating. Actually,
So just
have you
depends on
ever
the
come
person, I
across
suppose.
have you ever come across a YouTuber called Daniel Mackler? He's based there in New York. And just when you mentioned intergenerational trauma, that's his
Hmm.
kind of niche. He's a psychologist, and he's very much interested in intergenerational trauma. Yeah, he's
Cool.
most of his videos are about that. He's fascinating, very very interesting guy. But check him out if you get a chance. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Text me his name
yeah.
so that I can look it
Daniel
up.
Mackler. Yeah, I'll text you his name. Yeah, yeah. He's a good guy.
Mm,
Yeah.
very good. And what have you been up to? Are you making films or what? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's been a number of challenges to make films indoors, with just by yourself in sort of isolation films, little small
It's
short
a
videos.
challenge to your creativity. I believe in you.
Yeah. Oh,
You can,
thanks.
I mean, sure, you're doing it right now. Like, look at you go.
Exactly. Well, this is
You
part of it.
came up
Yeah.
with one. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think this is such a crazy, screwed up time that it'll be difficult to imagine what it was really like, in 10 years' time, or God forbid, maybe it'll be just as bad then or worse. Who knows? But otherwise,
don't put that out into the universe, Bergen.
Okay, it's going to be much better. Much better.
It's gonna be great. Everything's gonna be fine.
Yes, yeah.
This is not a massive change to our culture. People are not going to be afraid of each other now.
Well,
Get over it in a year.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that thing about the fear, because it is the most strongest emotion. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe love is stronger, but the fear is a very strong emotion, and there is so much of it. You're quite right. There's so much of it out there that it's going to have a significant effect, and I think people are probably underestimating the effect that it's going to have on people, on masses of people, and the effect that'll have on society in general,
Yeah, and I wonder as well, like, about the element of it that it is government mandated isolation, like a stay in your house order. Because I was chatting to somebody, and she was saying she's quite against the quarantine in general, because she was saying, like, that, if you want to isolate and if you're really concerned about this getting passed around, then stay in your fucking house, but, like, don't make me do it too if I don't want to. Like, the force behind it is what she really doesn't agree with. It's kind of like there are a lot of people who are afraid and they want to stay in their houses. Of course, the argument against that is that staying in the house and everybody doing it is to not overwhelm the hospitals.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, like, I'm aware of hospitals in New York being overwhelmed. I wonder if hospitals in California are overwhelmed.
Yeah, by the sounds of it, it's a lot less severe where you are.
Yeah, and I wonder if they would be if some people had stayed out. And, like, I think most people were already isolating before the California governor said that we had to.
Yeah.
So I wonder what it would have, how the differences would have been, but
Yeah, we'll never know.
We won't find that out. Yeah. We won't find that out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anything else you're up to? Are you writing or being creative or doing stuff like that with the time that you got?
Let's see. What have I done? I don't know. I wake up in the morning. I take my dog out to pee. I go. I let my dad have my dog for a couple hours, and I sleep more because she wakes up at 6, and that's absolutely obnoxious. And then I wake up again, and then I feed her, and I don't know. I mean, I spend a lot of time with my dog. I watch a lot of Netflix.
Yeah, like the whole world at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I meditate a lot, like for like 2 hours every day.
Wow.
It's just, yeah.
That's impressive.
But I mean, it's entertaining.
Yeah.
It's intellectually stimulating.
Yeah.
But in terms of writing and things like that, I don't know. I kind of fell out of, when you do something that's creative or something otherwise that is really resonating with you at a time, and you get into the flow. I don't get into the flow with writing or anything like that more recently. So I haven't really been doing that. I mean, I made the trays because I was going mad, and then I have an antique desk that my grandmother left that is my next project that I'm gonna restain and then do a tile mosaic on the top of, and I have no idea how to do a tile mosaic.
Good for you. That's a nice little project to have on you.
Yeah, but school starts back for me next week on Monday, so I'm going to be waking up at 2 a.m.
Oh, really? Do you have to do it remotely? Oh, yes. You'll have to do it London time. Oh, God.
I am on London time.
Oh, God.
It
8 hours.
Is brutal.
Yeah. And what's the course, Amoreena?
Masters of the Arts, Drama and Movement Therapy at Royal Central School of Speech and Drama.
All right. So that's a follow-on from your UCD qualification, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So I studied English and drama at UCD, and then I'll be getting my PhD after the MA. So I'll be in school until I'm 30. So that's fine.
Yeah. Well, there's no jobs out there at the moment anyway, so you might as well.
Sure, look, you know.
It'll probably be 100% unemployment within a couple of months. So, now's the time to be in college,
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting student loans. I've still got money.
Yeah.
It's not my money, but I've got somebody's money.
Yeah. Debt, that's the solution to everything.
Maybe they'll cancel debt. They've canceled everything else.
Yes. Was Bernie Sanders talking about cancelling everybody's student debt? Wasn't that one of it? No,
Bernie Sanders was absolutely talking about that, but Bernie Sanders is not talking about anything anymore because he pulled out of the candidacy last week.
Yeah.
It was a sad day for the parish. Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you like to do with it once you get out there into the world, when if and when the economy does start again?
Do you know what, Fergus? I would love to tell you, but I don't want anybody to steal my idea for my research for my PhD. So I don't think that I'm going to tell you.
Absolutely.
I'm going to keep it a secret
No
for
need.
now. I've still got a year until I can put a stamp on it and say that's my research, back off.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
You're dead right.
Yeah. But it will involve teaching, and I have some ideas on how I can integrate some of my other areas of my life into a therapeutic practice, basically.
Yeah, sounds fascinating. Yeah. Well, no, as you say, mental health is becoming a huge thing. I mean, we're kind of waking up to it here in Ireland as well, the importance of it. We're coming from zero, really, to ramping up a little bit. So there's going to be more need for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's interesting as well. I mean, even in light of the coronavirus thing, because your mental health is inextricably linked with your physical health.
Absolutely.
There have been so many studies that have shown evidence that the two are essentially one and the same. I mean, even just looking at a stress response, if your brain is in stress response, your body's in stress response,